Hey everyone, this is Tyson Alger. I'm the Oregon Ducks beat reporter for the Oregonian, and this is our weekly Pac-12 basketball roundup. As you may notice, there is no video component to it this week because my co-basketball partner, Danny Moran, is in Corvallis right now. Danny, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm just staying warm the best I can. But obviously with the Civil War going on this week, for football, it's a little bit tougher to be in one place to discuss basketball, but we're making it work any way we can.
Yeah, and so it's been a very interesting start to the season for both teams. Both Oregon and Oregon State have started out undefeated. The Ducks kind of went through the gauntlet of taking on Baylor and a very, very, in my opinion, underrated Valparaiso team on Sunday, and they came away with wins in both of those. And the Beavers are going to be gearing up for Valparaiso themselves. So, what's the state of basketball in Corvallis this week, Danny?
It's been pretty good. The Beavers got some pretty good news last Thursday when that Daniel Gomez's recovery from a broken hand appears to be ahead of schedule, in the sense that he's been cleared for practice. He's obviously the returning fifth-year senior forward who started 25 of Oregon State's games last year. He's a big defensive presence with shot blocking and kind of just directing the team zone, man-to-man looks. And obviously he had the option to not come back, given that he had graduated from Oregon State last year, but elected to come back, as a grad student this year. And so the news is that he's, back practicing with the team. He will not be back for the Tuesday game, likely against Valparaiso, but I think that was a bit of good news. Aside from that, the team on the that's actually on the floor is doing well too. They had a 2-game road trip at Bryce and at Santa Barbara. So they walked about 6,000 miles altogether in a very short period, and that's an area where the team really struggled last year. They went 2-9 on the road and came away with a pair of wins this year to start off. So already kind of ahead of the schedule on that. So it's the first 4-0 start since 2011. If they beat Valparaiso, they'll go to 5-0 for the first time since the original Gary Payton was a freshman. That's 1986. So that kind of says a little bit about the state of the program as a whole, over the past 20, 25 years or so, but also kind of just indication that things are maybe moving a little bit ahead of schedule with the rebuild here. But Valparaiso, Tyson, as you saw on Sunday when they came in to play Eugene, I mean, they're legit. They're a mid-major, but, they're on the cusp of the top 25 ranking. And, what do you see from that matchup, too? Because they played the Ducks pretty close up until the very end.
Yeah, to be honest, it was it was a pretty bad game to watch, at least in the first half. It was very, very sloppy. Valparaiso had, I believe they had 10 turnovers in the first half, and the Ducks did as well. So it was just a very bad first half. Oregon had got up to a 7-point lead, but Valparaiso is a team that if you kind of let off the throttle a little bit, they'll come back. So Valparaiso came back and was leading at the half, and really the difference between Valparaiso being ranked this week and Oregon probably falling out of the rankings was just Dylan Brooks taking over that game. He had 26 points. He had the first 8 points of the half for Oregon. And that was kind of something that I know that we've talked about in the past is, this Oregon team overall is more talented than it was a year before, but it was kind of wondering where the scoring was going to come from when a team was kind of stuck in their rut a little bit. And so you got 26 from Brooks, you got 21 from freshman Tyler Dorsey, and Valparaiso, I mean, I didn't rank them in the top 25 this week, but they probably would have been in my top 30. They were just a very, very kind of solid team, 1 through 5, and it's a mid-major, but they're one of the better mid-major teams. I believe they kind of took Maryland to the horn last year in the NCAA tournament, so it's going to be a really kind of a really good gauge for not only Oregon on Sunday when they played, but Oregon State coming up as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing that, Wayne Tickle talked about it today, and I'm sure it was referenced heading up to the game against Oregon on Sunday, is, Valparaiso brings back about 99% of the scoring from last year. So, in a day where, college basketball, where a lot of focus is on one and done, to have a team that has that kind of year-to-year cohesion, particularly coming off an NCAA tournament berth, That's really impressive no matter what league you're playing. So I think, I think a good thing for Oregon State, potentially, who's trying to make their first tournament since 1990, is given, Oregon's win over Baylor, which, given Oregon's injuries, that's, a really impressive win, one of the more impressive of the year thus far. Valpo kind of legitimized himself, I think, by playing the Ducks so closely in Eugene on that trip, and they already blew out Iona with another, potential mid-major tournament team. So it'll be an interesting game on Tuesday, and then the Beavers have 8 days before their next game, so they get a little bit of a rest, around the Thanksgiving holiday. But interesting to have both teams in the state, in the Pac-12 undefeated at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, if Oregon State can take care of Valparaiso and put together another win or two, I don't think it would be crazy to at least think that there's a potential that both these teams could be ranked in the top 25 at some point this season, with the way they're playing. Now, coming up this week, Oregon kind of has I really like the way they've kind of laid out their schedule this non-conference, where they have a really tough game and then they kind of sandwich a kind of a sandbagger in there as well. So like last week they had Baylor, great team. Then, nothing against Savannah State, but not in the same class as Baylor and Valparaiso. So then this week they'll play Arkansas State, which is not a great team. But then it's gearing up for Fresno State on Monday, which Fresno State is 4-0 right now, and then they'll be heading on the road for the first time next week and facing off against UNLV, which is right now is undefeated and a traditional power basketball program. And I think that's what I'm really kind of looking forward to, is the Ducks have been really good at home so far. It will be interesting to see how they kind of take this team that doesn't have a lot of depth right now because of those injuries on the road. I think they've played admirably, considering that Jordan Bell's been out, that Dylan Ennis has been out. But at some point, you can't just run 6 guys into the ground like they have the last 2 games. They were trying to get kind of Kendall Small and Trevor Manuel into the fold a little bit more against Savannah State, but against Valparaiso, I think Manuel maybe played a minute or 2. Kendall Small played 6 minutes in the first half, but I believe he had 3 turnovers to 2 points. That it's just kind of those freshman warts that you kind of got to work through. Not every player coming in is going to be like Tyler Dorsey or some of Oregon State's polished freshmen as well.
Yeah, I think there's a commonality between the two teams at this point. At least record-wise, maybe both are ahead of schedule. I think given the injuries for both teams, you mentioned Ennis. It's one of the guys for Oregon. And then for Oregon State, they've got Gomez and Jarmal Reed, another, returning senior and a big front court presence off the bench. Given that, I think if either of these teams have lost a game to this point, you wouldn't necessarily hold it against them, particularly in their overall tournament resume, because of just that they're both a bit beat up. So the kind of for both teams to be undefeated at this point, I think speaks to the coaching on both sides, and obviously having young guys step up, whether it's Dorsey for Oregon. But for Oregon State, obviously Gary Payton II has been, pretty much left off where he was last year, if not better.
He's a pretty good player.
Pretty solid. It's my first time watching him in person this year on a regular basis. Just, his ability to anticipate, where an opposing pass is going. And, he's, I think, in 35 consecutive games with a steal right now, which is 3 away from passing his dad's record at Oregon State, which is, pretty incredible for a guy to come in and make that level of an impact as a junior college transfer to, be the best player on his team back-to-back years. But, he made, a career high in threes on Saturday against Santa Barbara. So he's shooting the ball well. Now, Vivier is shooting over 50% from 3. Adds Stephen Thompson, who's one of the key freshmen. And the freshmen who have had to step up, for Oregon State have really done a good job. Drew Eubanks is starting in place of Daniel Gomez. He's averaging double figures. And so are, Trace Tinkle and Thompson off the bench. So you're getting, 35 points per game of scoring thus far from just those 3 freshmen. Then you've got Derek Bruce, who's a point guard, who's kind of taken some of the ball handling responsibility for about 10 minutes a game. Wayne Tinkles kind of referred to him as a human press break. So he kind of is able to give, to Vivier and Peyton a little bit of a rest as far as their ball handling duties. And I think that, in addition to the fact that they've got more shooters facing the floor now, the fact that those guys don't have to go for 35 minutes a game bringing the ball up and defending, I think you're seeing those shooting numbers go up because they're not getting so tired throughout the game. And it's still early, those numbers aren't really sustainable for anybody. But I think it's just encouraging for Beavers fans that those numbers are so high so early, whereas this is kind of the period where if you saw some growing pains, even from a team with this much talent, you'd say, okay, it's understandable because they're all playing together for the first time.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at, we're still probably about we're about a month and a week away from Pac-12 play really kind of beginning. That Civil War to start out the year is going to be a lot of fun, especially if these two teams can't keep playing at this clip. But you kind of look around, the top 5 teams of the Pac-12 with Oregon State, Utah, Cal, and Arizona. It's looking like that's going to be. I mean, none of those teams have looked incredible yet, and then Utah, which is a pretty well-disciplined, experienced team coming back. They went in and kind of ran away with their tails between their legs after getting just beat down by Miami there. So,
right.
You can't really just take anything for granted in this early season. So I think it's really encouraging to see that at least the Ducks and Beavers kind of have their stuff squared away right now. Now, whether or not that kind of sticks around, I mean, it's a long season. There's a lot of young faces on these teams, and at some point, from Oregon's perspective, at some point, Dorsey might have a bad game, or Chris Boucher, who 6'10" transfer, who has been almost lights out defensively for the last couple of weeks, he might struggle at some point. I think just playing this amount of minutes without kind of the backup is going to catch up to them. But overall, I mean, in terms of how you can grade a first week and a half of college basketball, I think this is about as good as you could have expected for the Ducks and Beavers.
Yeah, and then then the plus side of those injuries for both teams is that you have guys who have to step up. I mean, for Oregon, I'd imagine you did that with kind of Casey Benson at point guard. He's having to play a lot of minutes that you might not have expected from him early, and then for Oregon State, a guy like Drew Eubanks, who was seen as a reserve as maybe more of a long-term project. He's only been playing basketball since his freshman year of high school at a competitive level, that is. And he's coming in, and at this point is shooting about over 70% from the field. He's provided important defensive presence without Gomez on the floor. And so you would appear, and it's the same deal like what you mentioned with Dorsey. You don't expect him to bring that every game because of how young he is. You wouldn't be surprised if he has a couple of plumpers in there. But to get this level of experience early in big, meaningful games is huge. And so I think for both teams, when they get guys back from injuries, obviously the rotations will start to change, and teams may look a little bit different going into Pac-12 play, but it's pretty valuable experience that comes with the injuries to guys basically bring more experience to begin with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that should just about do it for this week, but we'll be back again here next week. It'll probably be on video. Maybe we can have Danny get his stuff together and actually, show up for a change.
I'll do my best, but sometimes it gets ugly when we're in the same room. So we'll see. Maybe we'll have a week apart, reconnect at the Civil War, and get things back on track.
Right, and so everyone can view our stuff at OregonLive.com/Ducks or /Beavers. We're both on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Alger, and I believe you are at Danny J. Moran. Is that correct?
Yeah, whoever got the Twitter first, didn't have to put the J in there. Stuck with it.
Awesome. Well, drive safe, man, and we'll get back together next week to talk some hoops.
Sounds good. Good talking to you, Tyson.
All right.